They weren't your typical big men by any means. Each possessed a creative mind, unshakable confidence, and nuanced instincts. So save those powerhouse tropes and Neanderthal characters for some other heavyweights. Scott Hall and Kevin Nash towered over the majority of their opponents, yes, but they were artful thinkers, relying just as much on brains as they did brawn in order to reach the top of the business. In smaller bodies, they'd have probably still been stars. Hall's swaggering smoothness and Nash's excessively dry wit would have still reached a wide audience. It just so happens that their giant personalities were augmented by their giant figures. I'm Jack from Cultaholic.com, and this is the captivating career, or careers I should say, of the Outsiders. Neither future outsider entered the business at an especially young age. Hall didn't begin wrestling until he was about 25 years old, training with fellow Goliath Dan Spivey in Florida, and the pair debuted together for Jim Crockett's Mid-Atlantic territory in October 1984. Together, they were known as American Starship, with Hall using the name Starship Coyote. Hall later went on to Vern Gagne's AWA, using the names Magnum Scott Hall due to that lovely Tom Selleck mustache he sported at the time, and also simply the name Big Scott Hall. There, he held the promotion's tag team belts alongside friend Kurt Hennig. For the remainder of the 80s, Hall gained experience in New Japan and in Memphis, and also briefly wrestled for World Championship Wrestling when it was still under the NWA label. Hall left WCW in November 1989 and later worked a tryout match for WWE in January 1990, losing to Paul Roma. Later that year, while Hall wrestled in Europe's CWA promotion, Nash formally made his wrestling debut for WCW at the age of 31. He was part of a clear Road Warriors knockoff called the Master Blasters, using the name Steel. The team made a few runs at the WCW United States Tag Team titles held by the Steiner brothers in the early part of 1991, but never reached that championship level. By the early part of that May, the team had split and Nash abandoned the gimmick. His next character proved a little more memorable, albeit for entirely the wrong reasons. At the 1991 Super Brawl, Nash re-emerged as Oz, a looming wizard that really had little interest in bestowing desired gifts upon brave travelers. Around the time Nash began cavorting about in his green tights and silver hair, Hall resurfaced in WCW, now playing a muscular womanizer called the Diamond Stud. The highlight of Stud's 1991 was a feud with popular ladies' man Tom Zenk, but curiously, he did team with Oz on house shows in late 1991. Little did anyone realize just how important a partnership between the two would be in just 5 years' time. Come 92, Nash jettisoned the woeful Oz character and instead began playing something that showed off his comedic chops, a mouthy wise guy named Vinny Vegas, complete with an over-the-top accent that made the Michigan native sound more like somebody from Tony Soprano's neck of the woods. He demolished Tommy Rich in his debut with the Vegas role at the January 92 Clash of the Champions. Briefly, Nash and Hall were teammates as the Stud was managed by Diamond Dallas Page and Vegas fell in with them to form the Diamond Mine. But Hall wasn't long for this arrangement, leaving Nash and DDP to rechristen themselves as the Vegas Connection. In the spring of 92, Hall left WCW for WWE, where he shifted into a much more memorable persona, Razor Ramon. Borrowing heavily from Al Pacino's portrayal of the ruthless, power-hungry Tony Montana in Scarface, Hall burst onto the WWE scene as a menacing heel, making his mark in colorful vignettes in which he bullied proprietors and other denizens of Miami. By the late summer, he was easily dispatching enhancement talent and aiding Ric Flair's cause by assaulting Macho Man Randy Savage. It didn't take long for WWE to treat Razor like a huge deal, aligning him with the Nature Boy and having him co-headline Survivor Series, and even putting him into a world title match at the 93 Royal Rumble against Bret Hart. As Razor remained a prominent figure on WWE programming throughout his feud with plucky underdog the 1-2-3 Kid, Nash was easing his way out of WCW, securing his release in early June of 1993. Just days later, he made his WWE debut at a house show, helping Shawn Michaels regain the IC title from former partner Marty Jannetty. Redubbed Diesel, Nash received copious amounts of face time as the unyielding bodyguard of Michaels. Months later, when Shawn vacated the IC title due to a real-life suspension, it was a now babyface Razor, who scooped up the gold, winning a 2-match series that included a battle royal followed by a singles victory over co-winner Rick Martel to fill the vacancy. Razor and Diesel's paths soon crossed, first in a match at the '93 Survivor Series while on opposite teams. When Michaels returned to the fold, he sought to regain the belt he never lost, hounding Ramon en route to a historic ladder match at WrestleMania 10 inside Madison Square Garden. Diesel was ejected from ringside early on in the bout after he ran interference, leaving Ramon and Michaels to create the template for the perfect ladder match, with Ramon narrowly winning. Weeks later on WWF Superstars, Ramon lost the belt to Diesel, who was beginning his own singles push, with Michaels essentially managing him. 4 months later at SummerSlam, Razor regained the belt from Diesel after Michaels accidentally superkicked his ally. The two locked horns again, this time in tag team action, as Diesel and Shawn, the reigning tag team champions, defeated Razor and 1-2-3 Kid in a classic title bout on their new program, Action Zone. There, Michaels accidentally kicked Diesel once again, and did so one more time at the following month's Survivor Series, resulting finally in the duo's dissolution. Days later, Diesel achieved the WWF Triple Crown, beating Bob Backlund in a matter of seconds inside MSG to capture the world title. Just 3 years earlier, he and Razor were a pair of unmolded heavyweights wading around in the WCW midcard, and here they were, WWE's top 2 champions. Diesel remained champion throughout most of '95, defending the gold at major pay-per-views against the likes of Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, and King Mabel. Razor, meanwhile, lost the IC gold to Jeff Jarrett at the Royal Rumble and spent months chasing him, regaining it only for a couple of days in May after a pair of house show switches. He also failed to defeat Michaels for the belt at that year's SummerSlam, losing in a rematch of their famed ladder match. But Razor did get the belt back ultimately, capturing a then record 4th IC title by defeating Dean Douglas at the October In Your House. Diesel's world title run lasted a week short of 1 year, while Razor's final IC title reign ended at the '96 Royal Rumble. Roughly a month later, both men agreed to toweringly lucrative contracts from their former employer, World Championship Wrestling, which was raring to procure a swift lead in the ongoing Monday Night Wars. They each finished with WWE in the spring of that year, going out under the controversial cloud that was the MSG curtain call, breaking kayfabe to say goodbye alongside on-screen rivals Shawn Michaels and Triple H, who together with Sean Waltman comprised the notorious off-camera entity known as the Clique. While that breach of kayfabe provided a shockwave, WCW's next move proved to be more line-blurring. Hall debuted on the Memorial Day episode of Nitro, stepping over the guardrail and disrupting a filler bout. In 2 appearances during the night, he made it clear that he and others were taking over WCW. At first, he remained formally unnamed by announcers, as did Nash, who arrived 2 weeks later, uttering similar threats to the WCW power structure. The two soon after used their real names as their professional identities, gate-crashing episodes of Nitro while taunting the company's top stars. These outsiders were soon joined at July's Bash at the Beach by an unlikely ally in Hulk Hogan, who turned heel to help crystallize the foundation of the New World Order. The NWO ran roughshod over WCW, lawlessly attacking their unassuming wrestlers with baseball bats, spray paint, and other anarchic props, while taking on defectors in their bid to fully realize a hostile takeover. Together with Hogan and an imposter Sting, Hall and Nash defeated an ace group of WCW icons in a War Games match at Fall Brawl. A month later at Halloween Havoc, Hall and Nash, known together as the Outsiders, defeated Harlem Heat to win the company's World Tag Team titles. They struggled in matches against the Steiner brothers, but always managed to keep their belts on some sort of technicality. Reunited with Waltman, now renamed Six, the trio had their own internal faction known as the Wolfpack. In October '97, the Outsiders' near-year-long reign ended when the Steiners defeated Hall and Six, who subbed for an injured Nash. The following month, Hall won the 60-man World War III Battle Royal to earn a future world title match. And Nash, meanwhile, was feuding with former NWO member The Giant and nearly broke his neck on a powerbomb gone wrong at the '98 sold-out pay-per-view. The Outsiders regained their tag team titles from the Steiners the next month after Scott turned on Rick, but Hall and Nash's good times didn't last. Hall lost his world title match against Sting at Uncensored, and 2 months later, he suddenly turned on Nash at Slamboree to dissolve the Outsiders union. The turn was preceded by the fragmenting of the once mighty NWO. Nash gunned for Hogan's spot as top dog, and amid continuous conflict between the two alphas, he turned on Hogan in April of 1998. Nash headed up the Wolfpack splinter group in the aftermath, and when Hall turned on Nash, it was at a time when the original invader had been absent for a couple of months. Nash's red and black version of the NWO gained members such as Sting, Lex Luger, and Conan to combat Hogan's old guard, while Nash himself feuded with Turncoat Hall. They collided at the 1998 Halloween Havoc, which Nash lost via countout, walking out after he'd beat his former friend into oblivion. The following month, it was Nash's turn to win the World War III Battle Royal, which earned him a shot at WCW World Heavyweight Champion Goldberg at Starrcade. And then it happened. Nash ended Goldberg's supposed 173-match unbeaten streak, capturing the WCW World Heavyweight title after Hall assisted his estranged friend by zapping the champion with a stun gun. This led to the infamous finger poke of doom 1 week later on WCW Nitro, in which Nash took a dive for apparent rival Hulk Hogan, forming a new version of the NWO that included both outsiders, Hogan, Lex Luger, Scott Steiner, Buff Bagwell, and Miss Elizabeth. The new NWO didn't last, its high mark being the forced unmasking of Rey Mysterio. Before long, Nash was back to being a babyface, while Hall, following a brief run as US champ, was off TV for close to 8 months in 1999. Nash won the WCW title from DDP at Slamboree before losing it to Randy Savage at Bash at the Beach in a tag team match. Suddenly a heel again, Nash was retired by Hogan the next month at Road Wild. But even that retirement didn't last, as Nash and Hall were seen together again at the onset of the Vince Russo era, teasing a reunion of sorts. By the year's end, NWO 2000 formed, with the outsiders joined by Steiner, Jeff Jarrett, and Bret Hart. And guess what? That didn't last very long either. Hall once more disappeared from WCW in February 2000, reportedly due to behind-the-scenes issues with TNT president Brad Siegel. Nash, meanwhile, sided with the Millionaires Club in their feud with the New Blood, where he was forced to continually defend Hall's WCW contract against the likes of Goldberg and other New Blood villains. There will be no storyline comeback for Hall, who was formally released from the company in October 2000. Nash, meanwhile, suddenly a heel once more, don't think about it, captured the WCW World Heavyweight title from Booker T, only to lose it back to Booker in a cage match at that year's Fall Brawl. Hall made a few appearances in ECW in late 2000, while Nash played out the string in the fading WCW, teaming with DDP and battling both the Natural Born Thrillers and the Magnificent Seven prior to Vince McMahon's purchase of the company's assets in March 2001. Nash didn't wrestle for over a year, while Hall made some appearances for New Japan in 2001, even wrestling a young Hiroshi Tanahashi that September. In early 2002, the duo plus Hulk Hogan made a grand return to WWE in an NWO revival, though Hogan was turned babyface after just 1 month, treated like a conquering hero returned. Nash battled injuries that year, while Hall's short-lived comeback ended when he was fired following the maligned plane ride from hell incident that May. Hall quickly resurfaced as one of the top stars of the brand new NWA Total Nonstop Action promotion, or TNA, where he wrestled 9 matches between June and October of that year. Nash, meanwhile, returned to the ring in the spring of 2003, now feuding with Clique friend Triple H over the World Heavyweight title on Monday Night Raw. Their rivalry culminated with a Hell in a Cell match at that year's Bad Blood, which was won by Triple H. Nash made his final appearance for the company at SummerSlam 2 months later, bowing out early in an Elimination Chamber match for the title. He left WWE 4 months later when his contract expired. After teaming together in a couple of lesser heralded appearances in 2004, the Outsiders resurfaced in TNA late that year, forming the Kings of Wrestling stable alongside Jeff Jarrett. They lost to AJ Styles, Jeff Hardy, and Randy Savage at Turning Point, and Hall was gone from the company the following month after losing to Jeff Hardy at the 2005 Final Resolution. Nash, meanwhile, turned face in order to challenge Jarrett for the world title, but was unsuccessful in a match at February's Against All Odds. Over the next several years, Nash added veteran comic relief to the X Division as part of Alex Shelley's Paparazzi Productions, and looked to reunite the Outsiders at the end of 2007, but Hall no-showed the Turning Point pay-per-view. In 2008, Nash joined the pretty NWO-esque main event Mafia stable with fellow veterans Sting, Scott Steiner, Booker T, and Kurt Angle, and they monopolized the top of TNA cards well into 2009. He even won the Legends title from AJ Styles at the ill-fated Victory Road pay-per-view that year. Come early 2010, everything retro was new again, as TNA reunited Hall, Nash, and Waltman, this time under the name The Band. Because the band was back together, do you see what they did there, yeah? They defeated Matt Morgan in a handicap match to win TNA's World Tag Team titles that May, a belt that Hall would never lose. He wrestled his last official match later that month, while Nash continued on as a solo act. Nash received his TNA release in late 2010, returning to WWE to take part in the 2011 Royal Rumble as a surprise entrant. And it was really well received, and fans wanting to see more of Big Sexy in WWE got exactly what they wished for, kind of, when Nash cost CM Punk the WWE title at that that year's SummerSlam, which somehow all kind of ended up putting him into a feud with good friend and company COO Triple H. The rivalry ended at December's TLC pay-per-view when Triple H defeated his longtime Clique brother in a ladder match, where a sledgehammer was suspended above the ring. Nash has only wrestled one match in WWE since, competing in the 2014 Royal Rumble as a guest entry once more. In the 6 years since, Nash has taken the odd indie booking, mostly for a promotion named Big Time Wrestling. His final match came in August 2018, winning a gauntlet match to capture the promotion's heavyweight title. Since then, citing repeated injuries, he formally retired from the ring at the dawn of 2020. Both he and Razor have entered the WWE Hall of Fame over the previous decade, Hall in 2014 and Nash the next year. And they were supposed to again as part of WrestleMania 36, going in as charter members of the New World Order alongside Hogan and Waltman. We have to imagine that that is going to come sooner rather than later. When one looks back at both Scott Hall and Kevin Nash's careers, you can't help but notice unusual paths to the top. In '91, they felt like afterthoughts, but over the coming years, they were top stars in WWE. And after that, they were headline-making megastars for a red-hot WCW. The Diamond Stud and Oz were about as far away from the pro wrestling zeitgeist as two characters could be, but Scott Hall and Kevin Nash historically shall remain adjacent to the core. The Outsiders are two of wrestling's all-time most transcendent performers, redefining the parameters for heavyweights, characters, promos, and image in ways that changed the game for good.